Ben Matsuya, welcome to World Building Secrets.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
So happy to have you. Ben is our comic illustrator. Ben, how did your passion for illustration begin?
Well, begin the origin story. Wow, it goes way back. I mean,
I can imagine.
as a kid, yeah, I've always just loved drawing as a kid. Loved comics. It was always like my first kind of passion, really. I don't even remember a time not like really into it,
Really?
so it's hard to really pinpoint like the exact thing, but.
Hmm.
Yeah, just always into it, always drawing as a kid. I have these ancient old drawings that, at my parents' house,
Oh,
always
that must be
drawing.
kind of cool to look
Yeah,
back and see all that progress.
yeah, I was always like, I remember getting the VHS of Lion King and freeze framing them or pausing them and like trying to recreate the drawings.
Oh
They
my
still might be somewhere in my
God.
house, but
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, I know there's my friends used to do this thing where you take a piece of paper, right, and you put it on the screen and you like
oh,
stencil it
right.
out.
You know
Um,
what? I was a snob even back then because I was like, that's cheating. I'm
I
gonna
was
do it
going to
for
ask
me.
you. I'm assuming,
Like,
if you have the skill, then you don't need to do that.
yeah, even as a little kid, I was like, I'm gonna freehand this, even though they all came out wonky and like sideways. But
That's incredible, though. Were your parents artists in any way?
no, that's funny. Not really. My mom's kind of crafty, I guess, but
Mhm.
my dad can't draw at all. Not even a
Wow,
stick figure. But
that's
yeah,
good.
they're always like, where did that come from? They don't know. But
Yeah, I feel like these kinds of like skill sets that certain people have that just come so naturally is really interesting. Like how it develops and where that comes from. Um,
yeah.
so comics were obviously probably a really big part of your childhood. Do you remember the first comic you've ever maybe purchased or read?
Oh, well, see, I grew up at the time when they were on like the grocery store racks. So like I
Mm,
remember, shopping with my mom and like waiting in line and like looking at I think they're like Archie and like Scrooge McDuck or stuff like that.
hmm.
And then my dad would bring some comics because he just saw that I was gravitating towards them. Uh, and they were random. They were not in any kind of order. They're, like,
Hmm.
so I would
Yeah.
read these single one-offs and be like, what happens at the end? And like, I would never resolve that.
Yeah.
So, and then a few times in, I think elementary school, I had one friend who's really into comics. And I
Hmm.
guess he kind of formally introduced me to like Marvel, DC stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Was there a
But
particular
yeah, so it goes way
series
back.
that stuck with you the most or you collected the most?
Well, I got into it through superheroes, I think like most
Mhm.
people do. So, Spider-Man, Batman have a really special place, in my heart. Superman, I love that stuff. So, yeah,
For sure.
yeah, that was probably it.
Mm. How have you seen? I mean, I think comics in the past, you look like 10, 15 years ago, they were a lot more popular than they are now. I mean, you look at some
Hmm.
editions from, the 90s, early 2000s, even
Oh
80s.
yeah.
One, they're worth an insane amount, but two, the demand for comics has really changed. I mean, everyone's kind of shifted to technology. How have you seen that develop
Hmm.
and impact the comic industry?
Yeah, the industry itself is kind of I feel like in this weird transitional phase.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I think their habits are changing. I'm not sure how that if people are getting those single issue floppy like off the rack they don't do that anymore.
Sure.
So I've noticed that the industry is kind of being dragged kicking and screaming to like the digital kind of
Hmm.
area space. I think that's the biggest change. But I tend to think of it more as narrative storytelling. And if you kind of view it like that, like it's as popular as ever, like because people will never not want to see and read stories, be
Right.
told stories, watch stories. So I think that's kind of how I see it now. And I think that's the
Hmm.
great thing about the Universe. It's like this multimedia
Right.
thing, right? So comics are just like a little piece of that. But overall, at the end of the day, it's storytelling, and people always will consume that in some way.
Definitely.
See a lot of comics going that direction directly to the phone digitally. They care less about like the ownership aspect of
Right.
like the physical thing. Um, so I mean, I don't know. I think comics are just changing, and
Adapting, yeah.
I think we have, yeah, exactly. And I think we just have to accept that and be okay with that,
Yeah.
and kind of let go with that
Hmm.
natural progression.
Definitely. I mean, you told me even earlier when we first met about webtoons, and there's so many other platforms that
Hmm.
are
Yeah,
digitalizing comics. How have you
right.
seen? Do you think that in a way has the digital improvement and I guess adaptation of the comic industry, has it improved the illustration aspect of it? Do you think that the illustrations can become better in any way because they're digital?
Well, in the case of Webtoon and a lot of those vertical scrolling platforms, there's a lot of criticism actually about the lack of quality. It's more about
Okay.
quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe it has to do with the attention span or people just needing the content being
Sure.
pumped out. Um, so, I mean, I don't want to say it's gotten worse, but I think there will always be a space for, really high quality people who take their time on,
Right.
illustrations, and yeah, I'm not too worried about that.
I think, when we're going to be releasing our comics, we're looking at the same thing, is how do we distribute? But
Hmm.
we're very much still pushing on some sort of aspect of them being available in physical copies. And I
Hmm.
think that allows it to be a lot more limited and collectible,
Right.
which
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
its own advantage, right? Because it's easy. You can get
Hmm.
it either through Amazon or Webtoons or
Yeah.
download it as a PDF if that's what we choose to do. But, ultimately, if someone has that physical copy, it's same thing as, you look at comics that are now 20, 30 years old, their value is incredible.
Oh, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
how did you get your start in comic illustration in particular?
Yeah, I guess professionally, like I was always drawing comics as a kid, so it came very like
Naturally.
I just yeah, I just kept drawing, and then I guess, but professionally, I guess a few years ago, I tweeted an illustration out to some creators that I was following, and it was just something for fun. I think it was like a caricature or something.
Hmm.
Um, and then they just kind of slid into my DMs and they're, hey man, we really like your stuff. Do you have any more? And we're thinking about writing the story. And yeah, so this was the comic that eventually came out of that DM conversation. And we kickstarted it, and yeah, it kind of brought me, I feel like, to that professional level. And yeah, from there, it just kind of snowballed, and people saw Jupiter Jet, and then they're like, hey, I saw that, and I got jobs from there, and it just kind of kept going. And that was, I mean, I want to say it was 2018. Maybe no,
Oh,
I
so
think it
not
was
that
maybe
long
earlier
ago.
than that. It was 20, I think it was even longer than that. But yeah.
So when you first got brought onto Jupiter Jet, what was the environment like? The people that you were working with, how was it working with the writers and adapting? Like, did they already have initial sketches, or did you have to basically come up with everything on your own?
They had like an idea,
Hmm.
but like written descriptions. So and I would go in there and kind of flesh it out, and then they'd make little adjustments and tweaks. But for the most part, they let me do kind of my thing, which is
That's
really
cool.
cool. Um, and yeah, so that has a big imprint on my career, and yeah, I do kind of credit them. I have a lot of love for them.
You have a very unique design style. I think it's very clearly inspired by what comics used to look like, and and whenever I look at your sketches, they have a very great feeling of nostalgia, but they're very
Yeah.
modern and very perfected in many ways. Where did your inspiration to, or what inspired your style, and how has it developed?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because I really do like the nostalgia, but the modern, like try
Mhm.
to like balance those things. So that's really nice that you said that. Yeah, it's hard to say really because, it just kind of comes out. But I would,
Mhm.
if I had to pinpoint it, a lot of it has to do with Batman the animated series back in the 90s. Yeah, actually, it's funny because when I was a kid or a teenager, I was really trying to get that really classic Superman or superhero American style. But then as I got older, I started getting a little more cartoony and loose. So more of an animated kind of quality. At least that
Mhm.
was maybe my subconscious going there. But yeah, so I just try to blend the two. So a lot of animation with classic superhero stuff. I think
Hmm.
that would be my best guess.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
hard to dissect and analyze yourself, but
no, yeah, that's very relatable for sure. But I do think you do exactly that. You have a great way of fusing those two together, and keeping them fresh, but they're still, it's obvious that it's your work, not anyone else's. How do you prioritize environments, characters? How do you communicate when, especially if there's something like very important that the story needs to tell?
yeah. I emphasize the facial expressions and that the body language, I think the most. So like
Hmm.
that's kind of what I key in on. Like I like to think that you can understand the story without any dialogue. Like if you took all the balloons away, you can still kind of understand like
That's a
at
good
least
way
how
to
they're
think about it.
feeling. The Universe comics, they have a lot of dialogue, so I don't think
Yeah, let's
anyone
talk
will
about let's
be.
talk about the Universe comics because they're great and there's
I
plenty
think it'll take
coming.
longer than 2 minutes. I think it'll take longer than 2 minutes to read.
Probably. We have some great ones. So tell me, first of all, how did you, how did you get involved with the project?
So I actually made some illustrations a few years ago just for fun.
Hmm.
I called them 5 for 5 comics. So
Okay.
I took the my favorite 5 movies of that year and I made them into basically one sheet comics with 5 panels. So I try to distill. So for example, I think we have Get Out, A Good Time, and The Shape of Water,
Mm-hmm.
and as the examples.
Oh, fantastic.
And I tried to distill the whole movie into 5 panels, basically. That was my
Damn,
little
that's a
creative challenge.
challenge.
Yeah, if hopefully it works. But so it got picked up, or some people on the internet saw it, and they kind of spread around. I think it got shared by a few pretty pretty big publications.
Hmm.
But that was in like 2018 or something. And then so cut to 3 or 4 years later, Josh just kind of emails me. He reaches out through my site and he's like, "Hey, I saw these things, and then I looked through your other work, and I really like it, and I think you'd be perfect for this big crazy project that we're working on."
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, it's basically the story. Yeah,
That's
so
crazy.
um, something I drew years ago kind of pays off. I had no expectation for anything.
The power of the internet.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like a little seed, and then it kind of
Mm.
grew later.
Oh,
Just kind of
I
grew.
like that. Yeah. So let's talk about the Universe comics. We have two comics that have been announced, Ryu and Krishah's. Ryu's is going to come out soon. Krishah's a little bit later, but since we're so close to our Krishah mint, I think it'd be great if maybe we can share some sneak peeks and you can tell us a little bit behind the process of the creation of Krishah's comic.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Yeah, so this is the
Oh,
first
wow.
few pages of the comic. I guess never before seen. It's
Mm-hmm.
so from here, we're starting on Helios Nexus, and we are getting a little. This is a little teaser of all these comics are like setup comics for the the larger story, and they all kind of interconnect with one another.
Mm-hmm.
There's little threads, I'd like to say, that kind of connect. So there are things that happen in this comic that kind of are foreshadowed or pay off in later comics. So it's rewards kind of, in-depth reading. But yeah, for this comic, kind of starts off with we have our main character here, Nova, and her bodyguard. And she's a politician. She represents the Merge, which is like the big kind of governing body of the universe, the
Mm-hmm.
Unioverse. Um, and she's meeting with another delegate here, and they're kind of experiencing some kind of civil unrest, some turmoil. And I think if we could look at the very bottom panel here, there's our main character, Krishah, who is an assassin, and you can imagine what happens next. Like again, it's just kind of trying to get the mood and the emotion of the scene, because
Mm-hmm.
in the script it's very descriptive. There's a lot going on, and yeah, like I do kind of have to draw 3 things happening at once in the same panel because there's just a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So with those, I thought, you know, I tried to capture like the chaos of that moment, when Krisha is doing her assassination attempt, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how chaotic that would be, and the crowd is reacting, so everyone's kind of freaking out that one moment. And yeah, so that's a technique I guess I employ when I'm trying to create this sense of chaos and unease. There's a lot of like quick action, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Really incredible, and I can't wait for them to come out. I also can't wait to actually see it physically because I actually have the Ryu comic physically somewhere.
that's right, yeah.
I've hidden it, but I'm really excited to see it. Here's a question for you: do you also write?
On my own, not for the universe, but
Hmm.
I have written my own stuff with my brother, who's my writing partner as well. Um,
Oh, awesome! I didn't know he was
yeah,
your
so it's kind
brother.
of
That's so cool.
like yeah, we basically wrote. We have our own graphic novel actually that we wrote
Hmm.
earlier.
Is that
Uh,
Midnight Massacre?
yeah, that's our horror comic. Yeah,
Awesome.
sorry, the dogs are going off.
That's okay.
Um,
No worries. So tell me about Midnight Massacre. How did that come to? How did you guys come up with the idea?
yeah, so that actually came from my working my first job, which was at a theme park, a Western themed theme park
No
out here in
way. Wait, what did you
California.
do? I need to
I was
know.
a game. Yeah, no, no. I was a. It's important to the story actually because
Okay.
I was a game operator. You know the people who kind of run the like the toss games or like
Hmm.
the basketball stuff. So I was
Yep.
doing that, and it was fun for the summer. It was my first job,
That's a
and
fun first job.
yeah, no, it was until you get to the off season, which is horrible and so boring.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so I quit from there. But so during the Halloween, or actually the month of October, they have the park converts to like a horror themed.
A lot of parks
Uh,
do that. Universal
yeah,
Studios does that too. They do like a whole horror
yeah, yeah,
Halloween
yeah,
theme. Yeah.
yeah. So the entire park changes, and they have this big Halloween extravaganza. Um, and so that was the inspiration for the story because our story takes place during a Halloween festival, but the
Um.
monsters come alive and basically start killing everybody.
Oh my
It's a
God.
comedy.
It's a. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, but it's a horror, so
obviously
you
it is.
expect that.
No, yeah, it's a horror comedy, and it takes place yeah during Halloween, and the main characters are the ride and games operators who are the only
Hmm.
ones who kind of know that the park is actually being taken over by real monsters and killing
But
real
everybody
people.
thinks they're just actors.
Yeah,
Wait, that's actually really genius.
yeah.
That's a
Thank
genius
you.
idea.
No, I think someone actually a movie came out actually with that same premise a few years ago that was really bad.
Oh
We
man.
wrote this, yeah, we wrote this in 2013, and we finally finished it in like 2016.
Okay. Oh, so it
Yeah,
took
so
you
you can
quite a
read
while.
it. Yeah, yeah, it did. It was 160 something pages. Yeah,
Oh,
we wrote, drew, colored everything, and it just
wow.
was a labor
Just
of
you and your
love.
brother?
hmm
That's
Actually,
so
he wrote
cool.
it. He
That's
wrote.
so
I
cool.
did everything else. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. How do you find working with your brother?
no, it's great. It's just a natural extension of our kind of relationship. Of we wrote all these comics when we were little, or we
That's
wrote comics when we were little.
hmm.
They are really basic stories, like bad guy robs a bank and
Yeah.
superhero comes in. Yeah, but now it's a little more technical. Now we have a lot more knowledge,
Hmm.
and but it still is fun, just as fun. And yeah, it's fun. It's good to work with somebody you really trust and you can really, you know, be honest with and just
Yeah.
be like, hey, look, that's not working. We got to change that, or like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's a you need a lot of trust, uh, and to work with somebody like that. Oh no, I mean I think that's why you also see like sibling creative partnerships a lot. Like the Coen brothers or
You
like
do. That's
the
true.
Russo brothers and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I
Yeah.
think you both understand. I mean, I think within the entertainment industry or any kind of artistic field, it's really easy to take things personal, and because it is
hmm
personal, especially when you work with
Yeah.
artists. And if you're trying to blend, I think a relationship that's purely professional, somebody that really looks at it in more of an artistic way, is bound to clash because there's just no empathy. how are you supposed to understand the other person? But if you have a good relationship with them, especially if they're your brother or your sister, I can definitely see that. Yeah, it's it's not surprising. Duffer Brothers, yeah,
right,
makes sense.
Yeah, Stranger Things, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Ben, thank you so much. This is fantastic. I really want to ask you, what kind of advice can you give to anybody looking to get into comic illustration, or, any really tips that you have for people that are looking to create or write comics?
Yeah. All aside from the obvious, draw every day and stuff like that that everyone hears, I'd say just uh, put yourself out there and try to make connections with other people within the industry. You don't have to be like super weird about it, or like you don't want to. There's a line that you should toe, but like make friends genuinely and naturally, and good things happen. Like people can't always work on something, so they're like, hey, I know somebody. Maybe do you want to do it? Like they help each other out. The comics community is really small, and everyone knows everybody. So like, yeah, if you can make genuine friendships, and they're really cool, first of all, too. So don't be super intimidated. Most people will respond to an email or a DM if it's like, hey, I really like your stuff, or just on that level. Like most people will at least give you a response and be nice. And if you see them in person, like at a con or something, that's even better. Like remember you. Um, I do. So yeah, it's the comics community is really small but really cool, and everyone is rooting for you. And like it's not as competitive and as like ruthless, I think, as other industries.
Yeah, it's a good point you're bringing up, because I think in like the music industry, it's like a fact that you need to. You're emailing all these hundreds of different people, and you're probably going to get 1, 2, maybe 3 emails back. Yeah, you don't really. It's not as I guess people aren't as comfortable collaborating and being actually wanting to help others. I mean, I guess if your inbox is flooded with 50,000 emails,
right? Yeah, that's kind of hard. But
yeah.
I think it's because the comics lifestyle is very isolated. So whenever somebody reaches out, I think everyone's happy.
Sure. Yeah.
It's very lonely. So you're like, oh, someone will talk to me,
Makes sense, though. That's really good to know. Thank you so much, Ben.
Also, just one last thing. Get a standing desk.
Get a standing desk?
That's like one, yeah. For ergonomics, you want to get a standing desk.
Oh, interesting.
It takes its toll, yeah.
I can imagine, yeah. Especially if
don't sit too much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. Great having you.
Thank you. Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much.